Hello everyone, I'm Gina Barwani, a product marketer with Zoho, and I will be taking you through an overview of Zoho Sprints. Before we begin, please note that this demo is designed primarily for those who are new to the sprint world, so I will be covering very basic terminologies and concepts today. As you may have already guessed, Zoho Sprints was developed by Zoho. We are a prominent brand in the SaaS industry, and our main goal is to build tech products that solve real-world problems. In 2021, in fact, we reached our 25th year in the industry. Over this time, we have built 50 plus apps and currently serve over 75 million users across more than 190 plus countries. Software is truly our craft, and as one of the pioneers in the SaaS field, we take this craft very seriously. We have built quite a vast variety of products across different functions. These include sales and marketing, finance, IT and help desk, human resources, custom solutions, office suite, email and collaboration, and we still have a lot more coming in the pipeline. Having said that, at Zoho we believed little drops of water make a mighty ocean. When we realized the benefits of working iteratively, we built an agile management tool called Zoho Sprints. So what exactly is agile management? More often than not, teams develop products according to what they think customers will want. Agile methodology centers around an iterative approach to project management and software development, which helps teams deliver their value to their customers faster and with fewer glitches. That's where Zoho Sprints comes from the picture. Agile development acknowledges the uncertainty that accompanies changing technologies in a fast-paced world, and it proposes iterative, short-term planning to overcome this. Work is split into sizable chunks, also known as sprints, which is where our name comes from, Zoho Sprints. That's where work is completed at different intervals over a period of, say, 1 to 6 weeks. Agile development recognizes that change is unavoidable when working on projects. It also recognizes that projects are a partnership between the company and the customer. Having a flexible approach to project development is much more easier than following a rigid one. Agile project management helps teams adapt quickly to the changes that arise over the course of a project. It starts with the product backlog, which is a master list of all the requirements for a product. All of your product work items will form part of the product backlog. The next stage would be your sprint planning. The entire team gets to weigh in on what needs to get done over the next 4 to 6 weeks. A huge part of Scrum, which is an agile methodology, is planning out targets and clearly envisioning them before taking any action. That's where the sprint backlog comes into place. The sprint backlog allows teams to clear work items from the product backlog. User stories or simple feature descriptions are tagged to a particular sprint, which are then carried out by the team. This transforms the product backlog from a list into an actionable plan with measurable results. A sprint backlog is created at the beginning of each sprint. In fact, the sprint, which you've been planning for, cannot start without your sprint backlog, since that's where team members plan their tasks, track progresses. The sprint backlog brings clarity to each sprint. It also estimates the workload for the first sprint and all future sprints. To put it more simply, the sprint backlog allows agile teams to prioritize project backlog items. Team members determine the sprint number and length at the beginning of the project. Each sprint would result in a draft, prototype, or a workable version of the final deliverable. Sprints break down a project into bite-sized chunks, as I had mentioned earlier. Teams plan a single sprint at a time and adapt future sprints based on the outcome of the previous one. This results in a potentially shippable product. Now I'll be doing a quick walkthrough of Zoho Sprints to provide a better understanding of the basics and key features. The first step will be signing in with your username and password to Zoho Sprints. It takes you to all your active projects page. At a glance, you will be able to see all your active projects. You will also have an overview of the project name, the percentage of completion, the start and end date, the number of sprints, stories, tasks, and bugs, and whether it is grouped to a category or not. Let us create our first project. Click on Create on the top right corner of the screen. Over here, I'm going to take an example for creating a website for our client Zilker. The website will be for the newly launched camera gear. I'm going to enter the name of the project over here. I'm going with the name Camera Gear Website Zilker. If need be, you can add a template from your previous projects. Here I'm going with the default template and hence I'm not selecting anything. The layout for this project is selected as standard layout, and I'm going with the standard layout even for the item layout, epic layout, and meeting layout. You can also add in a brief description about the project. Under the default section, you can select the project owner. In this case, the project owner is going to be me. Select the group to which you would like to categorize it under. You can also leave it ungrouped. Since it's a Zilker project, I'm going to categorize it under the name Zilker Projects. Add a project prefix. It is according to the project name. We can change it if we wish to. Every work item in your project will be prefixed with this ID. Since it's Camera Gear Website, in this case, it is CGW. Now the estimation type. An estimation type is a relative scale with which you assess the difficulty for each work item. For example, tying your shoelaces is 1, while organizing a gathering is 8. The default estimation type that we use is the Fibonacci series. You can choose to opt out of the Fibonacci series by creating your own custom estimation type. You can enter the start and end date of the project. I'm going with 20th April 2022, ending 2 months from now, that is 30th June 2022. You can also select the stage at which the project is currently on. Here it is on the planning stage, and hence I'm going with planning. Click on Create. We have now successfully created our project. Once you have created a project, you will land in the Backlog tab of the project. Zoho Sprints helps you to maintain and organize transparent product backlog. As mentioned earlier, the backlogs can be spread across multiple sprints, which helps your Scrum team to plan and deliver their sprints on time. The column on your left is a project backlog, and the one on your right is your sprint backlog. Since we have just begun, both are empty. So let us begin by creating our first work item. Clicking on Create over here at the top right will help you create your work item. There are 3 different types of work items for Zoho Sprints: a user story, a task, and a bug. The first work item is going to be that of a user story. A user story is ideally the description of a feature from the user's perspective. User stories can help team members empathize with the end user and better understand the goals of the final product. The item name is going to be the user story in this case. So I'm going with, as a user, I would like to have a favorite section so that I can find products that I like. You can attach files for this particular user story which you're creating. Currently, since we don't have any ongoing sprints, or we haven't yet planned for a sprint, it will automatically be added to a backlog. Otherwise, you will have an option to add it to a particular sprint. You can add a description if need be. Assign users. Over here, I'm assigning Andrew, Linda, and Nick. You can choose to categorize it under a particular epic What are epics? I will let you know shortly. The item type, as I had mentioned earlier, is story. The priority is that of medium. You can select a start date or an end date. Over here, I'm leaving it blank. Select the duration and select the estimation points. This would be based on the Fibonacci series, as mentioned earlier. I'm going with the estimation point of 2. Then you can also choose to relate this particular work item to a release. What a release is, I will let you know shortly. You've created your first user story. The next work item is going to be that of a task. A task is a feature description, but it's written from the developer's perspective. For example, to create a 3D view of the products. Again, I'm going to add it to the backlog. You can also add attachments if need be and a description. Assign users. Select the priority type. Select the start, end date, duration, and the estimation points, and click on create. The next work item which we're going to be creating is going to be that of a bug. As the name suggests, a bug is an unexpected software issue that requires some fixing. Here I'm going with a bug which is quite common. Payment module is not responsive. I'm going to add it to the backlog. Assign users. Select the priority type and select the estimation points. And click on create. You can manually create work items like I just did, or you can choose to import them. To do so, click on the 3 dots at the top right corner of the screen and click on import. Choose the file that you wish to import. Select if it is a sprint or not. Select the target and select the file type and click on import. Now that we have 3 work items in our backlog, let us create our first sprint. Click on create. Click on create sprint. I'm going to name it sprint 1. Sprint 1, website development. Add a description if required. The sprint owner is going to be me. I'm going to be adding a few more users. Select the duration. Over here it's going to be 2 weeks and click on create. Your first sprint is created. Now once your sprint is created, you can easily add work items from your backlog by using the drag and drop feature. Or you can also go to your work item and individually tag it to that particular sprint and click on update. Now you have 3 work items under your first sprint. Click on Start to get started with your sprint. Select the start and end date and click Yes Start. Once you click Start button, like we did, it brings us to the board module. In Zoho Sprints, work is completed incrementally using a Scrum Board. A Scrum Board provides you with a visual status of your sprint. It shows you the different stages of your workflow, including to do, in progress, and done. You can always customize these tags of your Scrum Board according to your project or sprint needs. This way, you have a clear idea of how to manage your project deliverables across various sprints and epics. Since we've just begun, all our work items are on the to-do list. As your work progresses, you can drag and drop work items across statuses like this until all of them are completed. We are now done with all our work items. On the top left, you'll find an option to view details. This will give you an overall view of your sprint. It's like a mini dashboard for your sprint. If you're looking for an overall view and you would want it for a particular sprint and not for the whole project, this is a place that you need to come to. Along with the dashboard of the sprint, you also have other details such as description, comments, items, timesheet, meetings, and users. On the top right of the dashboard, you have the option to click on complete. Once you click on yes, it takes you to the release notes, that is, the details of the sprint. The release notes over here gives you an overview of the number of work items in total, the split up of the task, stories, and bugs. And if you have any unresolved items or incomplete work items, it would show up over here. So in order to understand sprints a little better, we will be doing that by looking at an ongoing project with preloaded data. So right now, I will pick up the ongoing project of website development, again for our client Zilker, but this time it's going to be for a watch store. The backlog for this project has already been populated with work items. As and when your team size increases or you progress through a project, your backlog will have a lot more work items than what you started with. The search option above helps you to easily search for a backlog item without having to scroll through and looking for it manually. You can search with the name of your work item or an ID. Against each of the backlog items, you will be able to see that there are colored tags that are against it. For a certain item, there are no tags, and for certain items, there is just one, and for few, there are more than one. Each tag represents the epic or release that the work item is associated with. I will be explaining what an epic and release is right now. So in Zoho Sprints, we accommodate epics. An epic is a collection of user stories, tasks, and bugs that share a common objective. It's spread across multiple sprints under a single project. For example, if you're working on a 2-week sprint and decide to take on an integration between your product and a third-party application, you'll likely find that it would take more than a single sprint to complete that integration. This is where epics comes into play. You might label this epic something like XYZ integration and spread that required user stories, tasks, and bugs across multiple sprints. So let us now dive into the epics module to see how it works. On your left, you'll find all the epics listed, and with each epic, you should find the active, upcoming, and completed sprints. On the right side of the line, in this case, on the right side of the line of the epic catalog, you'll find the sprint which contains the work items that have been completed and the work items that have been tagged to this particular epic. If you hover the mouse over the plus sign, you will be able to add a new work item under this epic or associate an existing work item under this particular epic. You can add a fresh one or click on associate over here, and I will associate it with this particular epic of the catalog. Right now, that is under the backlog and which has to be done, and hence it's reflecting over here. The Add Epic button over here helps you to create a new epic if you wish. There's always a possibility to tag a particular epic from your backlog. Let me quickly show you that. Once you go to the backlog, I'm going to tag this particular work item to the epic website, and I click on update. And since that is part of the project backlog, as I had mentioned earlier, if I go to the website, it's going to be mentioned over here under to do and part of the backlog items. In this way, epics helps you to keep track of where you're headed in your particular project. Moving on to what the features are in a release module. So release management is a process of taking a software build from planning to deployment and managing the release cycle of multiple independent software releases through all the stages. The agile approach to release management is called continuous development. Continuous development is the ability to get new features, configuration changes, bug fixes, and experiments into the production or into the hands of the user safely, quickly, and sustainably. For example, if your team is coming up with a new version of your product, it can be added as a release. A version is the biggest deliverable that can contain few features or new features, enhancements, integrations, new user interface, etc. The team cannot load all the requirements in a single sprint, and hence that's where release helps. It is the biggest entity that can handle all the requirements of the team in a single process. With Zoho Sprints, you can stay release ready all the time. Click the plus sign in the relevant stage if you're adding another release to an ongoing project. Now, I mentioned stage. A stage denotes the phase or status of your release. I will come to that shortly. Clicking on Add Release under the planning stage, I'm going with beta test version 1. You can add a description if required. Select the start and end date. I'm going with 1 month from now. And since I added under the planning stage, the stage will be planning. The owner is going to be me. You can also select the color of the tag that is going to be and click on create. You've now created a release. Now we would like to add or associate work items to this particular release. By hovering over the other options, you can add an existing work item to this particular release or create a new work item and tag it to this particular release. So I'm going to associate an existing work item to this release. You can also associate work items from your backlog or your sprints. I'm going to select this and I'm going to select it, beta test version 1, and click on update. Now earlier I mentioned about stages. By default, there are 3 stages: planning, ongoing, and release stage. Planning is basically the stage in which your releases are in plan. Ongoing, here the releases are in progress, and release, this denotes all your releases that have already been released. There is always a possibility to customize these stages according to your requirements. By clicking on the plus symbol next to an existing stage name, you can add a stage before this particular stage or after this particular stage. Now that you're aware of the main modules of sprints, in order to stay productive, your team would have to track their progress constantly. Zoho Sprints has multiple charts and graphs that help you keep track of your project releases, epics, and sprints, thus allowing your agile team to stay at peak productivity so that you can meet targets, keep customers happy, and in turn, you can also be happy. So let me go through a few of them with you. The project dashboard. The project dashboard helps us to get an understanding of the overall view of the project. Your sprint activity graph. It gives you an activity detail over the timeline of 1 week. You have the option to view the graph of an earlier week. Over here, I'm going to select the week of December to view the activity graph. The overall completion is basically a pie representation of overall open and closed work items. The number of sprints that will be available on the left-hand side, along with numeric counts of the active sprints, upcoming sprints, and completed sprints. Your status productivity of the 5 most engaged users will help you track the most and the least engaged users in your project based on the work items under their particular status. The next segment under the dashboard shows the status of the backlogs that are in your project. The pie chart shows the type of work items that are there in your backlog, user stories, bugs, and tasks. While the backlog activity shows the number of items that are being added or moved out of your backlog. There is also an actual versus a planned graph that is available, along with your billable and non-billable graphs of the work that you have done for your project. Now on to the feed module. With work from home, or should I say work from anywhere in the world, becoming the new normal, collaboration is the key to delivering your projects on time and in an accommodative manner. Communication and trust, as you might already know, are important in every aspect of life. And this would also boil down to your agile teams. With agile project management, communication becomes even easier. This leads to better deliverables and also allows you to meet your client expectations on time. Zoho Sprints also includes a chat feature, which makes it easier and more convenient to communicate with your team. The feed module over here acts like any other social media feed. You can use it to post the status of your project, or you can use it to comment on your teammates' updates. You can comment or tag any particular teammate by clicking on tag a teammate. As you can see, there are two tabs. One is the recent feeds. This is basically every time that you make a change to your board, it will be reflected over here. The other tab is your activity stream. So this acts more like an activity log for your project. Now with your timesheet module. Your timesheet module allows for a team to log the hours for any item that they have worked on. There's a manual way of doing it by clicking on the plus log hours, or an automatic way of doing it by using the global timer. Each log will be approved or rejected by the project owner or the admin of the project. The timesheet module can be viewed as a grid view, which allows you to view the billable hours for a particular work item or a particular team member. There's also an availability to view the list view, which shows you the log hours against a particular user. Now on to the meeting module. This module helps you to track agile meetings, the current as well as the completed ones. You can view the completed meetings that have been scheduled earlier and also schedule a new meeting. Click on the schedule button on the top right. Over here, I'm going to name the meeting 3. And select the time and date. Add in the particular users, the duration, the recurring frequency. Now there's an option to tag a particular sprint to this meeting. If you select a sprint that is already been completed, you will have the option to click on sprint review for the meeting type or a retrospective. Now if a particular sprint is under planning, in this case, you have the option to select the meeting type as sprint planning. And for an ongoing sprint, you will have the option of different types of meeting type that would be sprint planning, daily stand-up, sprint review, and retrospective. I'm going to select none, and this will help me to just hold a meeting or call a meeting for backlog refinement. Select the location if you're having the meeting in person, or you can also use the URL if you're having the meeting online. Add in the agenda of the meeting if required. Over here I'm leaving it blank. And click on schedule. Now on to the reports module. I'll quickly go through the various reports that are available. The first one being the velocity chart. It gives a pictorial representation of the estimation points committed versus the estimation points completed. We arrive at the average velocity, which is, in simple terms, with an idea of how much we can take on for the next sprint. Average velocity is calculated as the total completed estimation points of closed sprints divided by the total number of closed sprints. As you scroll below, you can also get a detailed report of against each sprint. The next chart, which I will be going through with you, is the burn down chart. Now it shows the number of remaining estimation points across a timeline. With time, as we keep working, the amount of estimation points gradually decreases. The gray line is the ideal line and the orange line is the actual line. If the orange line goes beyond the gray line, it means work items were added or have been reopened. At the bottom, we can view a detailed summary of the burn down chart. We can view burn down chart based on sprints, epics, or based on points or by the count of sprints. The burn up chart. A burn up chart is similar to a burn down chart. It helps you track the actual progress of the team against the ideal progress. It tracks the completed estimation points on daily basis. You can use it to compare the team's actual progress with its ideal progress. It helps you see how the sprint should have been progressed using the ideal line. Tracking the current progress of the sprint, which is represented by the actual line. In this case, it would be the orange line. It also helps you to know the total number of points completed and the total number of points remaining at the end of the day. The cumulative flow. Now, the cumulative flow diagram, or the CFD, tracks the progress of the team's work items according to their status. Every work item is tagged with a particular status in the sprint board, and the cumulative flow diagram represents the progress of each status. The number of work items in your to-do list will not be altered unless a work item has been added or deleted. It will always show the number of work items that have passed through it. The to-do list goes down gradually, while the done should gradually go up as more and more work items are added to the done status. Next, the latency chart. In case you want to track all inactive work items in your project, you can do so by using the latency chart. So ideally, if a work item has been inactive for a period of 3 days or more, then it would be fetched over here in this chart. Sprint process time. This report lets you calculate and display the average time taken to complete the work items under each status in the chosen time period. Using this report, you can compare the average processing time across workflow states, predict cycle time for the new work items, and detect problematic states. The item process time. This report will help you calculate the total duration of all the work items across statuses in the sprint. Process time is the duration taken by a particular entity in the project. You can track the time taken by each work item in your sprint based on the duration taken across each status. It helps your team to know the work items that took a maximum duration in a particular status. The completed sprints. This is ideally a consolidated report of all your completed sprints. The report displays the sprint name, the start date, the actual date, and the planned date. The date on which it was completed on, whether it was ahead or there was a delay in completing it. It also includes the estimation points. In case you have a cancelled sprint which you're not able to complete within the scheduled end date, then those cancelled sprints will be reflected over here. Now onto epics, releases, and timesheet. Just like how you have a burn up and burn down report available for a particular sprint, in the same way you have the burn up and burn down report available for epics and releases. The timesheet report tab gives you the time log against sprints, work items, and against a particular user or the whole team. There's also a specific report for actual versus planned hours. It is based on the planned versus actual start and end dates of the work items. The difference, that is the variance between the planned and actual hours, will determine the efficiency of the project users. The manager can track the maximum and minimum hours spent on a work item, sprint, or user in a project. This brings us to the end of our project demo. Now that you have seen a demo of the product, I would like to talk to you about the available third-party integrations. These include Microsoft Teams, Google Workspace, Microsoft Office 365, Google Drive, Zendesk, and when it comes to developer tools, Zoho Sprints can be integrated with Jenkins, GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. In addition, Zoho Sprints can be seamlessly integrated with other Zoho apps, such as Zoho Projects, Zoho Flow, Zoho Desk, Zoho Meeting, Zoho Mail, Zoho Show, Zoho Analytics, and last but not the least, our in-house messaging service, Zoho Click. At Zoho, our main priority is our customers. So we always build customer-centric products. Zoho Sprints offers customer support 24 hours a day, 5 days a week over email, phone, and live chat. We offer personalized demos and onboarding, as well as live and exclusive webinars, tutorials, and help guides. With Zoho Sprints, you will have a dedicated account manager for your requests related to billing and subscriptions. If you are dissatisfied with our services in the first month and we are unable to address the issue, we will gladly offer you a full refund. Since customers are our main priority, security is our highest level of commitment at Zoho. Our methods are governed by ethics rather than mandated by law. Your privacy is important to us, and we ensure you that your data will be 100% secure. Zoho is the only company to block all adjunct surveillance and remove all third-party trackers from our sites. We will never sell or compromise your data. We also promise 100% compliance across all jurisdictions. Last but not the least, since we like to keep your sprinting on the go, Zoho Sprints is available on both Android and iOS operating systems. If you have any questions, requests, or feedback, you can write to us at support@zohosprints.com. Thank you very much and happy sprinting.